First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
I want you to warn Dave Zumpano. I want to talk about something really serious. I want to talk about Britney Spears. That's what I really want to talk about here.
I don't know if he's going to want to do that.
And I'm going to tell you this, because and the reason I want to talk about it is because I think there's going to come some certain point where my wife says, "You're nuts. We're taking control of your life for you." Now, hand over the wallet, the bank account, and all the passwords.
All right, this was our conversation about predicting the weather. He says it's been easy to predict. It's been an easy year to predict the weather. You can't go far into the future. That's the key. No more than 24 to 36 hours. It's simple.
But yesterday morning's forecast had a 15. Yesterday afternoon at noon, my wife said, because my daughter is going to do some painting outside, and my wife said, "Is it going to rain today?" And my daughter, who's very keen on this stuff, checked the app and said 15% chance of rain today.
The other thing is 24 to 36 hours really isn't great because, like, if I wanted to take my son to Enchanted Forest Saturday, it's Thursday. I can't even plan on that for sure because it's going to change. So I disagree with Richard.
It snowed last night in Old Forge.
He said
nice and cool for keeping the windows open last night.
Why are you not talking about the Delta variant? It's now spreading like crazy across the country, extremely bad in Florida. I'm just wondering. And then he followed up with 52% of adults don't have the vaccine, and states like Arkansas, Alabama, and Mississippi are less than 25% vaccinated.
Listen, I just came back from Florida last week. It's been over 7 days now. My guess is I came in contact with people with the variant. Because every single person now, I don't know what's happened to our senses. It's like over time, the human species has evolved. Someone can sneeze from like a mile away and I can hear it. And I'm going the other direction.
He can hear what direction it's going. He can hear this.
Dolphins, they say dolphins used to be able to walk on land, and humans used to not be able to hear a sneeze from a mile away. And that's where we are now. And I came back without the virus, as did my family. So
thank goodness.
I think the vaccine plays a big role.
It does, and that was all from Richard.
Okay. Dave Zumpano, have you broken it to him, what we want to talk about? Yeah. Dave Zumpano is with the State Planning Law Center, of course, and he's on the line right now. David, good morning.
Good morning. How's everyone doing on your end? Got some good talk going on.
We're hanging here. We're doing okay. We're just a little frustrated with the weather. Isn't that typical?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen, I realize it seems like just talking about pop culture with Britney Spears and everything that's going on there, but I really feel like this. What's going on with Britney Spears is interesting because it could happen, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, in anybody's family.
Yeah. Let's talk about how it starts, right? So usually when let's talk what a guardianship is first, and then how it is that it comes to be. So guardianship is when the system, the court system, the legal system, makes a determination that someone is not capable of providing for themselves. Now, in two ways. There's two ways. There's guardianship of the person, and there's guardianship of the property. So some people just might be really bad with money. They get money, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't really know, and they end up squandering it, or people take advantage of them. So you can go to a court and say, you know what? This person just does not have capacity to understand, how to utilize and access money. So we'd like to take over their money for them. The other one is guardianship of the person, and that says that, the person's not capable of making decisions in their own best interest, and they could ultimately harm themselves or others. And that's the key distinction around guardianship, that there has to be the determination at some point that they cannot reasonably discern, that distinction of hurting themselves or others. So somewhere in Britney's past, that was a concern. 99 times out of 100, it's due to mental illness.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And there's some form of mental illness that, not everything's processing properly. some forms of mental illness, many forms of mental illness, can be treated with medicine. So, it could bring those neurons to talk to each other better and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I think some time ago, I think it was about 15 years ago, when Britney was, up and coming and popular, something triggered, and the father thought it, necessary to bring the action. When it goes through the court proceeding, it's a trial. It's a full-blown trial.
Okay.
And what happens is the guardian gets someone appointed to represent them, and then the person bringing the action makes a claim and brings evidence that says, hey, here's all the different ways that Britney's going to hurt herself and someone else. Here's the decision she's made. Here's what she's doing. And then at some point, that court makes a decision and says, yes, it's in Britney's best interest to provide a guardian for her. And then they decide, is it a guardian of the person or property? Now, in this case, her dad was guardian of the person and property. Okay? So, and that's what's been happening. Now, what's odd about this case, it got to the point during the case where they even compelled medication on her, which is pretty extreme.
Right.
That's pretty extreme for them to compel medication. And but the other side of it is she was still able to perform.
Right.
She was able to, sing and do concerts and generate money, right? So it's really kind of quirky from the outside looking in what the basis is. My suspicion is that they have balanced her out with medication over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the tricky part. What's acceptable, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to decide how someone should behave or act.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing here is that when we look at someone, just because they don't act like you or I, anxious or nervous, that doesn't make them incapable of managing themselves,
right?
Or that they're going to hurt themselves.
And who gets to really determine? I understand it's the court, but this seems very archaic. It seems so 1950s.
I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier this week the idea of like a wife wants to divorce her husband, and they go, she's obviously a crazy person,
because
right?
she would never let me go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess there used to be some precedent for that, and that was kind of acceptable. I'm wondering how far back this dates and what the standard is to determine, like, my daughter's crazy, and I get to have all of her money, even though she's a super pop star.
Dave, I realize this would be probably your opinion, but do we treat women differently than we treat men in these situations?
Great question. I'm going to be, as an attorney, I'm going to use an example. I hate to use this one because it's so hot, but, Trump people who say the election one way or the other. Now, again, political out of it. What I'm a believer in is I'm a believer in I do trust the system.
Mm-hmm.
The system, what's hard about this is everybody's got an opinion on Britney Spears.
Right.
And none of them know jack about what's really going on.
Correct.
You're right. They're just hearing media snippets about free Britney and
right.
In the end, what I do is I do trust the system that if somebody brings a claim against someone, I can't imagine in this day and age that anyone would think differently if someone's male or female. Anyone would give it different weighting if they're, I don't see it. I believe that the system, when you get down in the dirty, whatever Britney did or doesn't do, we don't know. You'd have to get into the hearings. You'd have to see the evidence. You'd have to look and see what's really going on here to make an informed decision. That's why we have trials, right, where we have independent juries look at the evidence and decide decisions of fact, right? There's decisions in cases, there's decisions of fact and there's decisions of law. All areas of decision of law are relegated to the judge. The judge is the sole arbiter of the decision of law. The jury is the sole arbiter of the decision of fact.
Right.
So someone presents something, the jury decides whether those facts support that position or not.
I don't know. It's very interesting. The point you make is really the problem we live in today with there's so many options for media and for information, and there's social media, and there's just so much out there. Almost everyone doesn't really know what's really going on. It could be possible, and maybe even based on what you're saying here, probable that there is a psychological issue here where she needs assistance. I mean,
yeah,
right? I mean, but none of us would know what's really going on behind the scenes, behind the locked doors, in private, and what people who are probably close to her and have her best interest in mind, what they are saying. They're very quiet right now, and
well, and if you listen, they speak out of love when they do talk about her. They're not like midnight. So what's happening is here's hindsight's 20/20. Free Britney, free Britney, free Britney. Well, obviously, I don't think Britney was going to kill anyone else, but I think she might have been a threat to herself. She seems to be that type of personality, right? Very sensitive, and really you could see she's intense, right? Well, what if they free Britney and she kills herself? Then that didn't work out too well, So here's the thing: the media and social media is not subject to the decorum required in a courtroom. To present evidence, there's certain guidelines that have to be met to even present the evidence, to make sure that it's real, it's valid, medically. And so I always defer to the system. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean the system's perfect.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that people don't change. And the other part of it is you're relying on one man or woman who's the judge to decide, if I take the reins off this person and she kills herself,
right,
or does something, that's on me, right? Because I made a poor judgment, So I think but on the other hand, the judge could say, I have to go off the advice of doctors. And we don't know what the doctors are saying, right? They can't talk in the media. So that's probably got the heaviest weight, the weight of what the doctors are saying.
I do wonder, and this is just something to ponder, would this all be going on? Would anyone have stepped in had there not been millions of dollars at stake that she can produce as part of her career? And the other part is, why didn't we do this to Elvis? Come on. He was definitely a menace to himself.
Yeah. Well, Elvis, Michael Jackson, their menace to themselves was really drug addiction, right?
Right, that's true.
So
yep.
that's really not mental illness where,
good point. Yep.
I've never met a drug addict who thought they were killing themselves.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you. It's a crazy thing, but let me add a twist to this. Let's get into the estate planning side of it. Mm-hmm. Let's say you have a family member that might have some mental illness, that maybe is not, able to make their own decisions. They could even have a medical condition or diagnostic, that does affect the mind. That adds a tremendous amount of complexity to your planning, because when we present your will to the court to get it approved, the court has to approve and say,
right,
oh, yeah, this is really Dave Zumpano's will, and there's a process. One of the things that has to happen is those people who would be entitled to benefit from you, even if you didn't provide for them, must sign off and agree that it's your will. But if they're mentally incapacitated, they can't sign off. So there's a whole other legal proceeding that has to happen within your estate proceeding called probate, that we now have to go get somebody to represent that incapacitated person, when we're talking about mental incapacity, to help them sign off on the will. And it adds tremendous complexity to your situation, right? So it even could have impact to you when unintended. But to go back to your question, do we think people do this if they didn't have money? Yes. I deal with people every day where there's no money at all. They're actually on the street, some of these people. And it's really about people who love their family and they want to make sure they don't hurt themselves. That's the predominant driver.
And what you've brought this around to, quite perfectly, I think, is this is a problem that many people deal with So you're in your 50s and you're trying to think about what if something happens, what's going to happen with your estate. There are a lot of people out there that have someone who is in some way not able to handle life themselves on their own, and this becomes a really serious issue for them. They fear what happens to my son or daughter when I'm gone, and I think this is you really want to button this up to make sure that your loved ones are taken care of.
Well, let me add to that. If you have a disabled beneficiary, a child, or whoever might be receiving, there's two things. Likelihood is they're on some kind of state or federal benefits, right? If you, under all state and federal benefits, most all of them, there is a requirement that an individual to be on these state benefits cannot have a surplus of income or assets. They can't have more than $2,000 of assets in total. If you die and leave them $10,000, you disqualify them from all their state and federal benefits. Horrific outcome, right? So I had a client once. It wasn't my client. Somebody came to me, another attorney. They said, Dave, the woman left her grandson $25,000 because she loved him and he never had anything to poor kid. Well, he was disabled and he couldn't have $25,000, so he was in a group home and he was going to get kicked out of his group home. So I had to come in to help get a special court order to convert that $25,000 to what we call a supplemental needs trust or a special needs trust, which under law says you can leave any amount of money to someone disabled. You can leave $1 million, and it won't disqualify them from their state or federal benefits.
Yeah.
And that's really what we have to do. Not leave it up to the brother to take care of Johnny because his brother will take care of him, because his brother may die and the money ends up going to his wife and she remarries, right?
Right.
So it's really about protecting those disabled people by having that proper planning. It's really important. That's of the money, but that's not of the person, right?
Yep.
And the challenging part today, because I have a lot of people dealing with this, is you can't even get guardianship of the person. It's very, very difficult unless there is overt evidence that they are going to harm someone.
Yeah.
Technically, you can't get it unless they physically have hurt someone. They have to physically do harm to someone to the point of blood. It can't be they punched them. It's got to draw blood.
Wow.
I mean, that's literally the measurement to show that they did some level of harm that might need some kind of restraint.
It's like a hockey ruling. It's a minor penalty unless you draw blood. Then it's a major penalty.
Dave, before we let you go, Harry in New Hartford has a quick question. And I got about a minute and a half, Harry. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Bill. My question was, maybe it just shouldn't be her father. Maybe she does need somebody. A lot of people do. I know somebody who, manic, depressive, whatever, who's going to need somebody. They're homeless, and all that and stuff like that.
Right.
But if her right seems to be all these restrictions that do seem a little outrageous.
You can't cut your hair, right, and these things. Yeah.
Yeah, so the court could always appoint somebody else, I guess, if they find if there's evidence that her father is abusing that right or the money or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Harry, you want to comment on that, Dave? Harry, thank you. I'm going to hang up and let you listen here.
The one issue with that is someone who is a guardian of someone else's money under the law is entitled to be paid. So that's part of the problem here. She has a lot of money, so his compensation is significant.
Right.
So that is a factor. I don't know. I think the courts generally defer to family. Does a father have his daughter's best interest at heart? I'm sure every father in the world believes they do, but maybe sometimes it gets out of whack. So it's something you could always try,
And one final note on this thing, unlike some of the other parents who have been parents of celebrities who have been in the media, you don't see this guy out there doing interviews on TMZ and the Today Show and trying to sell his case. He's been kind of quiet and really demonized a bit in the media here. I find that to be maybe telling, I guess. It could be telling.
Yeah, I think that's true because what's happening now, with the cancel culture and everything, everybody wants to be the judge and jury from a 2-minute snippet or a 30-second snippet.
Yeah.
And what's really going on, I think, is a family. When you hear her sister talk about her, they speak very lovingly. Mm-hmm. There is some real issues. You could tell they have pain associated with this. I don't think anyone's getting pleasure out of managing Britney's money. I think that's more of the skewed media that wants to make a story of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, him not saying much tells a lot. He's the dad. Look, every one of us that's a dad, you understand what you would do to protect your daughter or son.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
That's the key thing.
Interesting stuff, Dave. I appreciate it. I'm glad I went down this road because there's a lot there. Dave Zumpano with State Planning Law Center. Thank you. We'll do this again. I appreciate it.
Alrighty, Bill. Thanks.
Have a great day. There's a lot to this. At some point, and what if her father is a loving father and she really is in trouble? And one thing that Dave said is wrong. I just want to correct it. He said people want to be judge and jury, and the only information they have is a snippet of a clip they see on TV. No, they are judge and jury.
Yeah,
they make their decision up, and they're firm believers this is the way it is.
So,
based on almost zero knowledge. That's the world we live in today.
And another great point he made that you wouldn't even think of is like, okay, say there's a couple of siblings and maybe somebody has some type of a disability and they need to be cared for.
Yeah.
So the parents leave a lump sum of money to Johnny to take care of Joey. Well, then Johnny dies in a car accident 6 months later, and Joey's on his own now.
Yeah.
Where if you had set up a fund like he described, there would still be money to help take care of him.
Or Johnny, the brother, who is the one who's able to take care of the parents, know he's going to take care of Joey.
Right.
Johnny gets in an accident, hurts his leg.
He's on opioids.
Goes on opioids and becomes an addict and blows all the money and doesn't even care about little Joey.
Yeah.
I mean,
happens.
There are a
that
million things that could happen. And I guess having it all buttoned up legally is probably the way to go.